Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can all agree that fashion is a huge factor in our lives. Not only does it protect our body, but it also enhances our natural beauty and flatter our body shape. But the current fashion industry should be illustrated like Ursula, the villain from The Little Mermaid, manipulative and deceiving. So ladies and gentlemen, as a customer, I, Kiara Tristantiana, would like to speak up about fashion and cultural appropriations. So first, let's understand the problem within the fashion industry. The fashion industry recognizes the power that they hold on to their customers. They understand that people would rather starve to death than to look bad. People would rather be in debt than to look bad. People would do anything to be fashionable. Knowing how to feed on people's insecurities and impulsiveness, the industry hit a gold mine: fast fashion. Fast fashion are inexpensive clothing that are mass-produced by mass retailers all around the world to respond to the latest trends. Why is it bad? Well, back then, companies, brands only had to come up with 4 lines a year for every season. But now, do you know how many times they come out with lines? 54 times a year, once weekly. Just imagine how much waste and pollution that costs to our environment. And not only that, for fast fashion to work, they need a cheap price. And how to maintain that cheap price? They underpay their workers. Someone even said, when you have a deal to buy 3 shirts for the price of 1, these companies are buying 3 workers for the price of 1. Scary, isn't it? I know. But that's not the highlight of the day from fast fashion. Fast fashion also contributes to the cultural appropriation, which I will talk about now. So let's understand what is cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation is an inappropriate adoption of an element of one's culture by another culture or identity. So what's the distinct difference between appropriation and appreciation? Appropriation tends to not respect the history of that cultural element, nor wanting to understand the background, and oftentimes misuse it for their own benefits and profits. And that is what's happening within the fashion industry: cultural appropriations. Many brands have been called out by these mistakes, but the one that stand out to me was Victoria's Secret. In 2012, Karlie Kloss came out of the runway wearing a lingerie, wearing a feathery headpiece from the Native Americans. They say it represents the Thanksgiving holiday, not giving a second thought of what that holiday represents for these indigenous people: the horrific genocide experiences by the European settlers and American colonists. Ignorant. Not only that, in 2016, Victoria's Secret came out with another line. A model walked down the runway wearing lingerie and Chinese dragon printed boots and a leather dragon wrapped around her body. So a Chinese sacred culture has been made into undergarments. So not only do they have sweatshops in China, they now also belittle their culture in such an offensive manner. So people ought to wonder, how can they be so ignorant towards these problems? Not only that, Gucci was highly criticized because at Milan Fashion Week, they came out with a male model wearing a turban, a religious accessory for Sikhs. So again, how can this important thing slip away? A historian lecturer said something about this. He said, it's because of how fast this industry moves. Oftentimes, these designers doesn't even have the time to have a proper research and a true understanding of the culture they're inspired from because they don't have the time. Fast fashion pushed them to have design weekly that resulted in them taking inspiration from anyone, anywhere, without truly understanding them because they don't have the time. So, to answer your question, to what extent do I agree fashion contributes to cultural appropriation? To the extent that I want to support slow fashion movement, a radical change within the system itself, because these cultural appropriations are plainly disrespectful towards this culture and indigenous people. We have to be better. So I demand for designers and manufacturers, they need to have an extra time to think of a proper design, proper process, and proper materials, and they need to understand what is okay to use and showcase in a very respectful manner. But not only that, I like to own up my mistake as a consumer. So I urge all of you to be more aware and critical to our fashion choices. Let us stop being impulsive buyer and think through what we want to buy. Let's normalize reusing, upcycling, and thrifting clothes to protect our environment and to stop this fast fashion industry. These cultural talks might offend some people, make people uncomfortable, but we need to recognize these indigenous people who have been oppressed and always disadvantaged by our industry, that this billion-dollar industry profit from for years without truly giving back to them. These critiques, demands, changes, and talks are necessary to create a better society, not only for us, but for those indigenous people and all the cultures all around the world. Thank you.